Hey guys, I'm the Philosopher and welcome to the Console Explosion podcast. Today we had two major topics. On the first topic, we dive into the world of the Hugo Awards, and Alex does a much better job of explaining that than I will, so I will let him do that in the actual podcast. The second topic is something I was really excited for, which is, of course, the Captain America Civil War movie, and we share our thoughts on that, our loves, our hates, everything we thought about the movie. But on that note, the question of the day today is, what did you guys think of Captain America Civil War? Did you guys like it? Did you not like it? Let us know down in the comments below. As always, I'm the Philosopher, and thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoy the show. Hey guys, I'm the Philosopher, and I've got some interesting topics. We will be getting to a Captain America trailer or review, but first we had a topic that Alex brought up, and I thought it was very interesting. I'm curious to know more. I know these two guys over here, Tyler and Moviegoer, don't know too much about it, so if you want to give us an overview of what we'll be talking about.
Okay, so this past month, the nominees for the Hugo Awards were announced. Hugo Awards are a sort of People's Choice Award for excellence in science fiction, literature, movies, graphic novels, and that sort of thing. It's been given out pretty much almost every year since 1936. It's been since the first what's called the World Science Fiction Convention was held in New York. It's one of the first conventions ever, fan conventions ever. And Worldcon and the Hugo Awards have basically been held almost every year since. There was a break from 1940 to 1945 because there was this thing in Europe and a few other places in the world. You may have heard of it. It probably didn't amount for much. Second World War. They took a break for that. And in the show notes, there should be a link to the list of nominees for this year at the World for the Hugo Awards. There's been this thing going on several years over the past few years of the Hugo Awards, involving these two groups of fans in these cliques called the Sad and Rabid Puppies. The Sad Puppies kind of came around first. The Sad Puppies were started by two science fiction writers named Larry Correia and John C. Wright, and basically, Correia and Wright do sort of pulpy science fiction stuff, military science fiction, hard-boiled detective science type urban fantasy, that sort of stuff. And they've had a fairly successful career over their career, and they haven't really been nominated for that many Hugo Awards, and other people who do the same type of material they do hadn't been nominated. And the idea was, oh hey, our type of science fiction, are basically the equivalent of the Michael Bay film of science fiction literature, doesn't get nominated for Hugo Awards very much. We're going to put together a slate of works that fit our style to try and get this nominated for the Hugo Awards. So the way the Hugo Awards are done is anyone who is attending Worldcon, the World Science Fiction Convention, can submit works for nomination in these various categories. I posted a link in our chat with the list of this year's nominees and has all the categories on there. This link will probably be in the show notes if you're watching this or listening to this after the fact. And the situation is basically that the whole slate thing was not responded to very well. It's going to be bad form. It's because part of the idea behind this is you just nominate everything on this slate lockstep, even if you hadn't necessarily read it or not, or watched it, or what have you. And the idea being by nomination is you nominate the stuff that you've read or watched that you thought was really great. And so there's a backlash there, but then this other science fiction writer and editor by the name of Theodore Beale, who goes with the pen name of Vox Dei, from the expression Vox Populi, Vox Dei, voice of the people is the voice of God, decided to start his own thing, which he called the Rabid Puppies. Now, Vox Dei is not a nice person. He is, frankly, racist. He was kicked out of the Science Fiction Writers Association for using the SFWA Twitter account to post links to screeds he posted on his personal blogs saying racist remarks about several African American writers in the SFWA. And his goal for the Rabid Puppies was, rather than trying to highlight the sort of mainstream but not necessarily high concept science fiction writers that the Sad Puppies were trying to do, was to focus on writers who fit more his personal political philosophy. To varying degrees of success, and he's changed his tactics over time since then. Last year, the Rabid Puppies managed to get a whole bunch of stuff on the ballots, partially because Day, who had some background in the video game industry, tried appealing to Gamergaters and a few other groups, trying to get them in there. But Day was effectively completely rebuffed. The only work on his slate that got an award was Guardians of the Galaxy, but that's because Guardians of the Galaxy had enough people who were behind it that, honestly, if the slates weren't there, it could have made it on the ballot anyway. So this year, Day changed his tactics, where he basically tried to, for lack of a better term, co-opt a bunch of works which may have made it on the ballot anyway, so that if these works made it on, then he still could go, oh, I still won. These works made it on the ballot. Some of these works are like the new Neil Gaiman Sandman graphic novel, the new novel by Neil Stevenson. For example, there's a short story by Brian Sanderson on there that was on the slate. And there's an analysis by a site called File770, who's been really great about covering this slate stuff and the Puppies ever since this started several years ago. And I really recommend checking this out. Again, there will be a link, hopefully, in the show notes. And I have it in the chat right now. And so there's been much of debate about this, because since Day has put some good works on there to co-opt the thing, and also some somewhat nonsensical choices on there, there's kind of a question of, we can't just blanket say no award for the stuff he submitted anymore, because not all of it is actually crap. He also has some weird picks there. He's, on the one hand, Beale owns a publication company, a publishing label called Castelia House, which is based out of Norway, and he's pushed a whole bunch of his stuff on there. Jerry Purnelli, who's won Hugo Awards for an author before, is nominated for Best Editor because Purnell edited a short story anthology for Castelia House. Day's put himself on the slate. On the other hand, in an attempt to discredit the awards by putting silly picks on there, he nominated a story by Chuck Tingle, who writes bizarre erotic fiction. The story in question being titled, see if I can find this on here. It's under Best Related Work. Just a second. Oh, where the heck did it go? Here it is. Space Raptor Butt Invasion is the title of the Chuck Tingle work, which got the nomination.
Wow. There's also another one on here that on this link that I have called Safe Space as Rape Room.
Yeah, that's from another one of the Castelia House things. In fact, it says on the link there. It's from CasteliaHouse.com. It's one of the anti-social justice warrior things that Castelia House has put out. In this case, the idea of eliminating safe spaces from science fiction convention, that sort of stuff. Anti having spaces for women who feel threatened, or or people with disabilities who are overwhelmed, to be safe and to collect themselves and deal with situations and that sort of thing. He's very much against that sort of stuff.
Sounds kind of like an asshole.
He is an absolute asshole. I mean, the circumstances of him getting kicked out of the SFWA, I mean, if that didn't cinch it right there, where when you're harassing one of your fellow writers and trying to use the official Twitter account of the organization that you're a part of that's supposed to champion and promote science fiction writers as a whole and promote good paying rates from publications and help them find work and help prevent writers from being abused by novelty presses or that sort of thing, and using that to attack your fellow writers who are minorities, that's just bullshit.
I agree.
And so the reason I brought this up a little bit at the end of the last episode is, like, some of the works here are kind of like interesting in terms of the Chinese curse may live in an interesting time sense in terms of that they're trying to co-opt these writers, and often for Fox Day, these writers who are on his slate, his Rabbit Puppy slate, were never consulted before being included on the slate. So these are writers who would not necessarily endorse his position. Neil Gaiman doesn't know, is probably consider himself above this stuff, or at the very least would certainly not endorse Vox Day's positions, for example. But we have on the, for example, the best graphic story, we have Sandman Overture, the new Neil Gaiman graphic novel. For best dramatic presentation short form, and I found this pick was odd, My Little Pony Friendship is Magic from this last season, Season 5, episodes 1 and 2, parts 1 and 2 of the Cutie Map two-parter.
Which makes absolutely no sense.
Yes, that's what people who, like, in science fiction circles who watch My Little Pony, who are looking at this and going, this relates in no way to the political gist of this, and near as I can tell, they're putting this on there as a sort of shield.
Right.
I was about to say, I would understand maybe, I think it's Season 4 episode, there's 2 episodes there that's kind of like science fiction, which I can understand, but the episode they nominated, that's not really science fiction there, that's more of a fantasy episode.
Sometimes it makes it on the on the Hugo Award nominations occasionally. Most of George R.R. Martin's Game of Thrones novels, A Song of Ice and Fire series, has gotten nominated frequently for the best dramatic presentation short form. There is usually one episode of Game of Thrones nominated. This is actually the first year where Game of Thrones hasn't gotten nominated. Usually that award is the Doctor Who, Game of Thrones, and Something Else award for best dramatic presentation short form, I like to call it. The amusing bit was on the dramatic presentation long form. They submitted The Martian, which was definitely going to get nominated anyway. They submitted Avengers: Age of Ultron, which was definitely going to get nominated anyway, because those movies did really well. Everyone watched them, and everyone thought they were generally good films. And then what they didn't pick for their other spots, they didn't do the other nominees in this category were Ex Machina, which I've been meaning to watch and I haven't gotten around to. Mm-hmm. Mad Max Fury Road, which is an excellent film, and Star Wars: The Force Awakens. And instead, what the Rabid Puppies put was actually 3 video games.
What?
Witcher 3, Metal Gear Solid 5, and Until Dawn.
I can't argue with that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, this is definitely feels like, as far as video games goes, picking video games that were good enough would they potentially be kind of a shield to a certain degree in terms of, yes, we are these are included on the slate because they're coming from, I guess, a place of bad faith, but if they'd gotten nominated, I couldn't argue with that.
What did these games get nominated for?
This was Best Dramatic Presentation Long Form. But they did not get nominated. They were on the slate for this category.
Okay.
That said, I'd probably have gone with like Mad Max and The Force Awakens for this category over those. I might have still gone with Witcher 3 though. Either Witcher 3 or MGS 5.
I know if Jared were here, he would have to say that The Witcher would have to win because he loves that game. Apparently, he can't get off that game's balls.
Yeah. So, that's the general gist of what's going on, of what's been going on in that. With that, it's interesting to see. As someone who went to Worldcon last year, had a great time, and kind of wish I could go this year, but due to various reasons I can't. I'm definitely interested to see how the awards play out this year, because there's enough good stuff that's included, that the rabid puppies included as a shield, that this isn't just going to be a clear-cut case of no award winning the categories that the puppies have taken over, or the non-nominees, the non-slate includees necessarily winning the ones the puppies took over. Because I'm looking at, for example, the category for best graphic story. Sandman's got a really good shot at this category. There's a lot of people who, ever since Sandman wrapped up, have been wanting more, and here's more Sandman. And I can't argue with that one.
Now, as someone who doesn't watch or read a lot of these films, or as up to date on a lot of the sci-fi stuff that you're talking about, what's the big the impact? Because you sound really passionate about this. I'm curious to know how this is affecting your genre, or what it is that you think about all this going on right now. Not just Fox Day, but the whole situation. Well,
the Hugo Awards are kind of to a certain degree a big deal in science fiction fandom. It's like, I wouldn't call it exactly the Oscars, because probably close to the Oscars in terms of a industry picked by other authors and people in the field thing is the Nebulous, which is another major award. But this is probably the best form of People's Choice Award that I've seen, and it's science fiction focused, because most People's Choice Awards you see, it's the anyone can nominate, anyone can vote, and oftentimes you get the American Idol flooding the phones, flooding the website, flooding the mailbox, a ballot stuffing effect. And here, because to a certain degree there's sort of the gatekeeping thing if you have to have a membership, you get an interesting mix of stuff that that I might not necessarily have read otherwise or seen otherwise, with stuff that I have read and I recognize, and authors I've read and I recognize. Example, and it helps that there's such a big weight of history behind it. It's an award that's born out of the first not just like the first science fiction convention, but perhaps the first fan convention ever. The original Worldcon way back in the 1930s, and it's named at the Hugo Awards being named after Hugo Gernsback, one of the biggest named editors in science fiction. Guy who's kind of responsible for building science fiction fandom as a thing, because when he was editor of Astounding, in the letters column, he ran the addresses of the people who wrote letters in, and that's how a lot of these fan zine letter writing circles and early organized fandom got together, is because they saw the mailing addresses of other people who wrote into Astounding and wrote these other letter writers, and so a lot of stuff came out of it that way. And so there's this kind of weight of history behind the Hugo Awards, which this is kind of playing into in terms of what direction the Hugo Awards take. Last year at Worldcon, there was, in fact, this is a big enough thing, and this has become an issue for enough years, that they passed at the business meeting 2 measures to sort of change how Hugo Award voting is done, and nominations are tabulated, which are going to be ratified or up for ratification at this year's Worldcon. They are kind of convoluted to explain, but I describe them as. But the 2 are called. There's 4 to 6, which is everyone nominates 4 works, and the category is 5 works long. So no one slate can dominate the award. So no slate can dominate the award just by sheer force of numbers. Because a slate can only be 4 works long, but there'll be 6 works in the category, so there will always be a couple things that aren't part of that slate, for example. The other one is a more complicated thing called E Pluribus Hugo, which basically the idea being is you have a vote, sort of as you divide your vote among the number of works that you nominate, and as they tabulate the awards, tabulate the nominations to pick what goes on the ballot, that if a work on your ballot on your nomination ballot is eliminated, then the weight of the vote going onto the other works on your ballot is increased. So the idea being somewhat is it makes it harder to do the slate thing again. It's been very convolutedly explained, and I didn't get a good grasp of it at the business meeting that year, and I still don't know exactly how it works, but supposedly it's going to fix everything. See?
I don't know. That sounds a little complicated.
Oh, it's hella complicated. I'm a technical, one of the things with my major was taking classes in technical writing, and I remember going to the business meeting and looking at the presentation and going, I can't make heads or tail of this. And going home later, reading their website where they give all the information on how this is supposed to work, and still going, I still don't know what the heck this is, how the heck this is supposed to work in terms of the raw numbers. So never mind being able to describe it in like a handful of minutes on a podcast.
Right. And how big of an influence have the Sad and Rabbit puppies had on the Hugo nominations?
They've had a significant amount. Last year, they've dominated several categories. Usually best in like short story and novella, as well as some of the editorial and fanzine categories. Editorial, it's partially because, unfortunately, because of the way science fiction books are published and stuff, you don't necessarily know who the editors are. For magazines, I know who the editor of Clark's World magazine is. It's Neil Clark, and I know because it's on the website. It's listed editor Neil Clark. I know the editor for Analog is. I know the editor for Asimov's is. If I were to pick up a copy of, for example, any science fiction book on my shelf right now, like novel, not a collection of short stories, but a novel on my shelf, I could not tell you who the editor of that book was because it's not listed in there. And this is something which other writers in the industry have gotten into, like big names in science fiction, not just like fandom, but big names in science fiction have weighed in on this heavily. George R.R. Martin, the Great Bearded Glacier, has on his blog been spending a tremendous amount of time just talking about this. Presumably when he's not writing and stuff, he's like he takes a break from writing, goes, look at his computer, sees what's going on, sees the sad puppy stuff, and goes, oh God.
So this is actually really big then not just to viewers, but the people who are participating in it. I mean, if you have George R.R. Martin, actually keeping up to this is something that's pretty significant in that realm.
Oh, absolutely. John Scalzi's weighed in on this. Nora Jemisin has weighed in on this. There have been a lot of science fiction writers who have been actively paying attention to this and had a vested interest on this. Like at Spokane Worldcon last year, Sasquan, I think the only reason that I didn't get a chance to see George R.R. Martin face to face in like the business meetings or whatever is because for some reason the con committee decided to schedule some of his panels opposed to the business meeting. Otherwise, I'm pretty sure he would have been there. As an example. So it's a really big deal, at least in science fiction fandom and related to these awards and stuff. Now, we do have a competing award starting up this year. Dragon Con, which is the other major long-running science fiction convention, is also starting their own Reader's Choice Awards this year as kind of a competition to Worldcon and the Hugo Awards. And this is kind of particularly of note because Dragon Con has never done awards in the past, and it's interesting to see how this award will play out in relation to other to the other awards, and because Dragon Con has a bigger turnout, if perhaps some of the puppies will pay more attention to that award, like, okay, this is a Populous Choice Awards, and this combined with the rules changes, we'll focus more on that, and things will fluctuate with the Hugo Awards, and basically the Dragon Con Award becomes basically the puppy award or what have you, and the Hugo Award kind of stays how it is with the literary science fiction take on the awards.
Huh. Okay. That is a strange world that I have never heard of, actually.
It is strange. It's an interesting and exciting world, to a certain degree. And I mean, a lot of the great books in science fiction have been nominated for Hugo and Awards and Nebula Awards. Arthur C. Clarke's Rendezvous with Rama, Anne McCaffrey's Pern novels. If there's a big name in science fiction, like who the mass populace that knows, Ellison, Asimov, Heinlein, they probably at some point have a big shiny rocket ship on their mantelpiece, at least one. Or for that matter, Phil Foglio, the guy who did a whole bunch of Magic cards back in the day, has won awards. Has got a whole bunch of rocket ships for Best Fan Artist, Best Professional Artist, and when they started the Best Graphic Story category, Best Graphic Story for his Girl Genius webcomic until he pulled himself out of consideration to let other people have a shot.
Damn.
Yeah.
So where can people find more information on this whole situation that's going on, or is it just a general thing?
Mike Glyer, who does a proprietary website called File 770, which has frequently been nominated for Best Fanzine, has been keeping track of this and is a good general aggregator for science fiction news in general. That's at file770, all numbers.com. Definitely a good place to check this out for a discussion and that sort of thing. John Scalzi on his blog at whatever.scalzi.com has also weighed in on this in a few places. And George R.R. Martin on his Live Journal has weighed in on this a few times. See if I can find his Live Journal address.
Okay. And while you do that, did you say that you're also a writer as well?
Yes, I do a fanzine. There's a freely distributed fan science fiction sort of fan-made magazine. Basically, it's spun off from my own show, Breaking It All Down. And that can be found at efanzines.com. You can find a whole bunch of other great fanzine authors over there. Chris Garcia does a bunch of good stuff.
Cool.
I have the URL for George's live journal in our chat. This will probably be in the show notes.
Yep, I'll post this in the live chat, and this will also be in the show notes as well.
It's worth reading George's live journal anyway. He posts some great stuff there.
Cool. All right. Thank you, good sir. That has been a lot of information. I like having these conversations because I get to introduce to a whole world I never even knew about. It's not something that I actively know, but I love learning about all the different worlds that are going on there because I'm one kind of nerd, but there's so many different kinds of nerds out there. So that's kind of cool to talk about that. And thank you, by the way, for bringing this topic up.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for letting me ramble on about this.
No problem. So I do want to give a disclaimer. We're going to be talking about Captain America in a little bit here. So if you don't want any spoilers, this is the section where you want to hop off. That way I don't break any hearts or ruin anything. But I did want to talk about the Captain America movie, Civil War, if you somehow live under a rock. Yeah, so I just want to give you guys a few minutes to hop out of that. And also, if anybody in the podcast, they didn't want any spoilers, this will be the part where they hop out. If they do, then stay, and we will ruin it for you, and I will not feel bad, but it's okay.
Not taking that chance.
You got 5 seconds. You got 5 seconds. 5 seconds.
He's already gone.
Oh, he's gone.
He didn't give us a countdown or anything.
I was going to say, you got 5 seconds to leave before we spoil it.
Yeah.
Captain America dies.
only in the comic version.
Yeah, right. So I think I was wrong on that one. But I still have some. I have some predictions that I'm going to save for later on. But yeah, so I don't want to do just the general review. I kind of want to. Well, we only got a half an hour, but I want to know about some of the individual characters before we say the whole entire thing. But the most obvious one is the character himself, Captain America. It's his movie. So what did you guys actually think of him in this movie, as he was supposed to be the main character?
I think
you're good.
I think Cap was very well written in the movie. I liked the fact that, to a certain degree, differently even from the comic event, Captain America was much more of a gray character in this film compared to like Winter Soldier, where he's very clearly 100% in the white. Right. Here is like on the one hand, with this being anti-reg, you could honestly have legitimate debate both ways as far as for whether whether Cap should have signed the Sokovia Accords and whether the Sokovia Accords were right, or whether Cap was in the right for refusing to sign the Sokovia Accords, which is really great. I appreciate the fact that the film is generally consistent, kind of in how from what we see of the Sokovia Accords and their consequences, how they work, and that. Yes, Cap's the protagonist, and he didn't sign the Sokovia Accords, and on the one hand we're rooting for Cap, but we can have this discussion of, well, but maybe he should have signed it. Even at one point in the film, Cap nearly does sign onto the Accords. So I like the fact that Cap is very much a gray character here in this movie, which is great.
What about you, Tyler?
On the movie, let's see. Even though this is a Captain America movie, he wasn't the superhero I was really looking forward to. It was Spider-Man.
Okay. Before we get too far, because we'll talk about Spider-Man, I guess, next. But I agree about the gray area. And I love morally gray areas. I don't like Captain America, to be honest with you. The movie version of him, I do really like. I have multiple reasons why I don't like Captain America, but when it comes to the comic and the game, Marvel Ultimate Alliance, which is pretty good, and the movie, I've always sided with Captain America on the anti-registration sort of viewpoint, and I talked about that in a past podcast as well. But yeah, he wasn't 100% in the right. The things that he was doing in the movie, it wasn't like clear cut that he was in the right, and I really like that, even though it was his movie. And side note, if you guys do like comics and you haven't read the comic, Captain America: Civil War, obviously what the movie is based off of. If you guys haven't read the comic, check it out. It's really good. It's different from the movie, but it is great in its own right. But yes, I agree with you, Tyler, as well. Spider-Man.
But his one superhero, I think, didn't you make a big deal about this superhero, Black Panther?
Oh yeah.
Dude, I never heard of this superhero before, but after seeing this movie, I was like, I'm waiting for his movie now.
Yeah. I've been ready for his movie.
Yeah.
I'd heard of him some back in the day. I'd read like a bunch of old Avengers trade paperbacks. I'm like, oh, I've seen Black Panther here, a little bit of Black Panther there, but I've never really like gotten a Black Panther story. And with him getting a significant amount of character focus in this film, to the point where he's practically co-protagonist. Like he, Cap, and Iron Man are like co-protagonists of the movie, and with his whole character arc. Was really impressive, and I really appreciated it, and that it worked really well.
Yeah, and speaking of those three characters, let's talk about that tunnel scene, the chase scene, or whatever you want to call it, the race chase. That was done so well, I think. The fact it didn't look cheesy that they were running faster than the cars around them. I don't know if it was the special effects or what, but it worked. It wasn't like, you know, the upper half of their body, and they're like,
I actually noticed that in the movie. I was like, man, they must be on some kind of new juice there.
Yeah, I kind of want to watch the making of. Like, I don't usually buy DVDs, but I would like to watch the making of this movie, because that scene, among many other scenes in the movie, was great. I think those three characters, the way they had that whole. Like you said, co-protagonist sort of situation going on. It was very well done when they had their scenes, and it was impressive that they had this going on with all the other characters that had development in the movie. One huge character had a development, but before we go to him, or actually her, Winter Soldier, the other main protagonist.
Yeah, Bucky definitely going kind of full Born Identity / Nomad in this arc. Like I love the fact that that the Winter Soldier, they basically patterned his look. I don't know if anyone in here is familiar with the character of Nomad from the 1990s Marvel Comics. He was like the 1950s Bucky, like when Cap was frozen, and they reintroduced him during an arc in like the 70s with like 50s Captain America becoming the racist great grand director, and Cap and Falcon and the Black Panthers teaming up to take him down. Like not like Wakanda Black Panther. I mean like the Black Panther Party Black Panthers.
Oh, the Black Panthers.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So the Bucky from that ended up. Cap passed his Nomad mantle, which he had during a couple times where he'd given up the Shield and the Captain America title. He'd had to take on the mantle of Nomad. When he became Cap again, he passed the Nomad mantle onto the 50s Bucky, and then in the 90s he got his own comic series, and his look in that is a lot like the look of the Winter Soldier in this, with the long hair and that particular kind of style of street clothes and that sort of thing, although not with the metal arm.
Right.
And so I thought that was a great look. Like I remember reading an interview with someone reading the Winter Soldier arc in the comics, and seeing Nomad in that and thinking it was Bucky for a second because he knew the new Bucky was going to be in this arc because they'd seen the movie first, but thinking that Nomad was Bucky when it was the other way, when it was something different. And so because they've styled the look so much to the point that I want Bucky to have his own movie.
It might be possible, but speaking of Nomad, I still can't tell because they left it very ambiguous, but I feel like Captain America, or Steve Rogers as Captain America, he's going to be done. And I'm wondering if he's going to take on the mantle of Nomad or something like that.
That would be interesting. Also become interesting if they had... I don't know if they're going to fit U.S. Agent in there, but I could see them interesting doing something with that, particularly with the other character who I was impressed to see returning for this movie, which is Thunderbolt Ross.
Yeah.
Same
actor too, right?
Yeah, same actor from the earlier Incredible Hulk movie, not the Ang Lee one, but the other one.
Yeah. Edward Norton.
Yeah, the Ed Norton one. And I think if we got it's also interesting though because this movie has as its antagonist Baron Zemo, now Colonel Zemo, and
right.
one of the things is when they first introduced the team of the Thunderbolts, the leader of the Thunderbolts in the comic book version initially was Baron Zemo under a cover identity, and the whole thing was it was supervillains posing as superheroes. And Zemo is at the end of this movie, as opposed to Baron Strucker in Age of Ultron. Zemo's alive.
Is he?
Yes, Zemo. He's in the cage with. He's in the cell with. What's his face? Chewing him out like if you raise your voice, you'll get zapped and that sort of thing. Because he tries to kill himself, and Black Panther stops him.
Right. That's yep. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, what with Thunderbolt Ross's nickname being, with Thaddeus Ross's nickname being Thunderbolt Ross, I could see this being a way to perhaps set up a Thunderbolts team or something like that. Perhaps depending on how whether Baron Zemo rehabilitates in some form or another, or whether Colonel Zemo in this case, being sort of the leader of the team, being a leader of the team, whether
right.
as just the Thunderbolts or perhaps this film's the MCU's version of the Dark Avengers.
If they were to put those characters into the MCU right now, what movie would they be? Like Iron Man or Thor or what?
If they were to introduce them, a couple of ways I could see this being done. Perhaps if they do, I don't know if they'll do another Iron Man movie. Robert Downey Jr. is going back and forth on whether he wants to do a full-on Iron Man movie. But with kind of setting up Iron Man and Thaddeus Ross's Avengers as sort of the Thunderbolts, perhaps maybe not a semi-rehabilitated Zemo with a blast collar, perhaps even introducing Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers in this way, and then focusing on her origin for her own film, which has already been greenlit down the road, and maybe a few other characters like that for that focus, or having Ross's sort of Black Ops Thunderbolts team perhaps being the one sent to take down Captain America or the Avengers in hiding in Wakanda, perhaps them even being the antagonists of the Black Panther movie when that starts, rather than because Ulysses Klaue on his own, I don't think is going to hold up in the movie by himself.
No, probably not. It's a good point. I didn't think about that because they did already lead into that. Black Panther was the one that captured him instead of letting him die, and then they are going to take Winter Soldier, or they already have him there. So that's a possibility. That will be interesting. I'd like to remember that in case that happens, and we can go back and you can be like, yeah, I called it, and it will be awesome because we're theorists for movies. But but yes, character development. There was a few characters, if not all of them, that had development within this movie that didn't get as much light in other movies, and Scarlet Witch, for me, was that character. Among the characters I already know of, Spider-Man actually had some development within the movie, but Scarlet Witch, she really stepped it up compared to Age of Ultron. She was awesome. Her scenes were awesome, and she kicked ass. That was really, really cool. And to get back to a point that you made earlier about Captain America being kind of gray, when Scarlet Witch saved, I believe, Captain America from Crossbones,
Yeah.
and that whole explosion thing, one, that was badass, but two, that was really really messed up. It was really kind of dark that she just, she did this, and then also not just him, but, took out a building, and then the whole Captain America's response to that was kind of, you have to break a few eggs to make an omelet sort of situation, and you see how I guess far he had not fallen, but compared to who he was in the past, how Boy Scoutish he was.
Yeah, it is. In the past, he's very much, we're going to save everyone, whereas here he's kind of like, you can't save everyone.
We're at war. Yeah.
Yeah. And I appreciate her character arc as well, and how she related the whole thing with the Sokovia Accords, in terms of, not just in terms of just, she was from Sokovia, and so there's a certain degree of baggage of her related to what happened to her country and her home being part of what's brought on these Accords, but also in terms of how these are going to responding to her, like with her basically being under house arrest at the Avengers base, for example.
Quick question, what's her name again?
Scarlet Witch.
Wanda.
Wanda
Okay.
Maximoff.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Quicksilver's sister.
Yep.
Okay, I know who you're talking about, but I totally lost her name. Okay.
Yeah. With her under house arrest, and kind of her and the Vision, and their chemistry together, but also relating to, with the Vision, kind of like, okay, I'm still kind of answering heavily to Tony Stark, because on the one hand I'm my own person, but on the other hand I'm also kind of Jarvis. And that bit there, and this kind of ties in also with when we get to the airport fight with the Vision and Scarlet Witch combined with Hawkeye and Black Widow, where both are kind of pulling their punches with each other because they're both friends, and maybe with Wanda and Vision, there's a little bit more of more affection kind of building there, playing into their comic book counterparts. And so there's that kind of bit. That airport fight in general, that was just freaking awesome.
Yes,
Oh.
it was.
Who else likes that joke that Spider-Man said about Star Wars?
You guys remember the old movie with the ice planet, Empire Strikes Back?
Oh my god, he was great. Well, real quick, that part where Scarlet Witch pushes Vision's shit into China was awesome and great.
Yeah.
It's like stuffs them into the earth and sends them all the way down. Oh my god, so strong. so awesome.
It does a great job of setting up that her abilities aren't just, oh, I can telekinetically move stuff around. It's like, oh, I'm I'm messing with Vision's density manipulation, and it really gets across that her powers are a very different idiom than everyone else. It's described as a kind of out of context problem compared to everyone else's powers, where to a certain degree everyone else kind of has one trick, but it's one trick they're really good at playing with and doing different things with.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
And it'll be extra interesting when we get to Doctor Strange, where Doctor Strange in the comics has the same level of very different things he can do with his abilities, and so it's a very different sort of out of context thing compared to everyone else. To the point that the two ways to tell when shit's hit the fan in the Marvel Comics universe is the Watcher shows up and Doctor Strange shows up.
Mm-hmm. 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 They haven't shown the Watcher yet, though, have they?
Well, the Watcher is under weird legal baggage because he first debuted in a Fantastic Four comic,
Right.
which is the same reason why we don't have the Skrulls.
Yeah.
Who are the Skrulls, or is that one person?
The Skrulls are a race of shape-shifting aliens who are normally at war with the Kree.
Yeah. You're thinking of Super Skrull is the really popular one.
Yeah, because he can take on other people's powers. He can replicate powers.
I never heard of these Skrulls. Sorry.
They are one of the bigger alien races in the Marvel universe. The point they all got their own because they're shape-shifting and take on and it's hard to tell when someone's a Skrull or not. They did a whole big storyline called Secret Invasion, a little after Civil War, with the whole premise of a whole bunch of heroes and other characters have been hiding have actually been Skrulls for a really long time, and trying to figure out who's a Skrull and who's not.
Yeah, that's one of the ones I want to read. It sounds really awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but sorry, I got you off a topic with Scarlet Witch. Spider-Man was very awesome.
Spider-Man.
Yeah, I like Tom Holland, the new Spider-Man, a lot. I haven't seen the Amazing Spider-Man movie, so I can't compare him to that guy. But I like him more than Tobey Maguire.
Yeah, I really like this version of Spider-Man. I like the young high school Spider-Man. I like the wisecracking, squeaky voice. They made him a nerd, but they didn't make him I didn't like Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. I liked the movie because it was entertaining, but I didn't feel like he got Peter Parker right. And that's just my opinion. I actually think this is the best Spider-Man so far. Granted, he wasn't in his own movie, which he will get one. Spider-Man Homecoming is definitely going to be a thing, and I'm excited for it. But he was great. All the cutscenes where he was fighting was great. All the dialogue, the wisecracks, it was awesome. He was Spider-Man, and he was Peter Parker, and I felt like it was perfect. Even when he was fighting, he was making some dumb mistakes, but still using his spider senses, and you see their version of the spider sense essentially, and it was it's hard to say. It was it was amazing. I really enjoyed Spider-Man in that movie. I can't wait for the movie.
I definitely agree. Spider-Man is kind of in terms of casting, it's one of the things with the same problem some people have with Batman, where it's some actors are really good at being Bruce Wayne. Some actors are really good at being Batman, but not necessarily the other half. And it's important to kind of get that total package. And with Tom Holland, they got the total package. He can be dorky, and kind of shy and awkward Peter Parker, but he can also be outgoing, boisterous, wisecracking, gregarious Spider-Man. And even just to be kind of obnoxious, as we lead into all of the great chemistry this entire cast has. We have Bucky and Falcon having great chemistry.
Oh my God, yes.
Falcon and Falcon and Black Widow with Red Wing at the beginning of the movie. With the drone. So thank you to the drone. I'm not going to say thank you to drone. It's got a name. His name's Red Wing. Pet it.
I've got to say, one of the funniest scenes in that movie was, I can't remember what knocked him down, but it was, there was two funny scenes, but the funniest one was when they were lying on the ground. You have Winter Soldier and Falcon lying on the ground, and I think he used his little drone.
Yeah,
at
he
some
uses
point.
Red Wing.
Yeah, to knock
drone.
out Spider-Man right out the window. And they're just lying on the ground, and Winter Soldier's like, you couldn't have used that sooner? And Falcon's just like, I hate you so much right now. God, it was so great. Their chemistry was awesome. Can you move your seat up?
Oh.
No, the part where it's
Right, the car. Also, speaking of which, as a segue to another character, Sharon Carter in Agent 13 in this movie is in Winter Soldier. She had a little bit, but we didn't know who she was. We didn't know her relationship to Peggy Carter. We didn't quite have the romance or anything like that building. And then here we get that spell out with, oh, she's the niece of Cap's one true love. And
let's make out.
But also we get through Sharon Carter through Peggy, or Peggy through Sharon Carter at Peggy's funeral. We get, I think, a better version of the "You Move" speech, which I've heard kind of the debate off and on about that speech and how good it is and whether it's tonally kind of iffy. This is either plant yourself like a tree, by the river of truth, and tell them no, you move. And in the comics, in the comic book Civil War storyline, that speech is given by Cap, and it gives it a little bit of kind of weird, iffy implications to a certain degree because, I mean, Cap on the one hand, he's Captain America, he is honest and forthright, and is not going to abuse his position. But on the other hand, it's a logic that has been used occasionally to abuse positions or to justify positions to abuse people. But putting it from Peggy, albeit by proxy through Sharon, who is a character who you've seen through the Agent Carter TV series and in the Captain America and in the original Captain America movie, The First Avenger, where she's a person who has had to deal with prejudice and face institutionalized prejudice all of her career, and has had to tell people who said, no, you can't do this, no, you can't be a spy, no, you can't lead S.H.I.E.L.D., no, you move. It gives that speech a lot more weight than it gets just from being from Cap. And having Peggy through Sharon giving the speech to inspire Cap and motivate Cap also made it a much more emotionally resonant moment than Cap giving it in the Civil War comics event to explain why he's opposing the Registration Act.
That makes a lot of sense. There were a lot of, I feel, very emotional or powerful situations in the whole movie. It really it did a good job of balancing all the different emotions between the laughter and the action and then all the tense, serious situations. Like, I mean, it was a very serious situation. You know, it wasn't. These guys are superheroes, but there's a lot of collateral damage happening. There's a lot of people dying as a direct result of them, saving the city or the world or whatever.
Yep.
And they have to answer for that. And it's very, very interesting, and it's a very serious situation if you really think about it, because you
I don't think they should.
Oh, man.
I don't think they should. If they weren't there, everyone would be dead. I don't think they have the answer to no one.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, like that is the whole debate. Like I posted I read a few different forum sites, and both of them have really big, drawn-out threads on there, just talking about the Sokovia Accords and how they relate. On the one hand, you're basically tying down your first responders and a whole bunch of bureaucracy when perhaps, hey, the Kree have shown up and decided to invade. We need to react quickly, but you have to jump through these hoops. But they have jumped through these hoops first. Or you have people with motivation, as Cap points out, the people, whoever's in charge of this and in charge of the Avengers, this UN committee, they are people, and people have agendas. And perhaps, there's a thing going on in country A, where the Avengers could step in and stop this bad thing from happening, but country B, who might have authority over the Avengers because they're UN Security Council or whatever, might be more motivated to operate with feet of clay, or as people on this commission change, their priorities will change and that sort of thing. So Cap and Tony Stark really bring up valid points here. Tony Stark says, "Hey, it's a compromise, but it's a better compromise now than later, where potentially we get drafted," which is kind of the scenario that happened in the Civil War comics event. With you had like Luke Cage saying, "Yeah, I'm not going to register. I'm going to sit this out," and then Shield busting down his door.
Oh yeah.
And that sort of thing. It's like better to take this middle ground now rather than getting. We don't have mutants in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so we don't have the looming threat of the Mutant Registration Act. But having something like that, or, I mean, it's that sort of situation, and I appreciate that. That having the Sokovia Accords be the sort of nice, different way where it's more about oversight of the Avengers, and to a certain degree on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. with the Secret Warriors and the Inhumans, than having it be all-powered heroes everywhere in the world must register.
Right. Yeah. And that's a really big difference in the Civil War and the movie, the live action, and the comic, is that the act that they have in the comic covers all mutants, superpowered, any heroes, vigilantes, anything. And the other big part for me that I got that I guess you would say it bugged me was their alter egos. They couldn't remain anonymous. So Spider-Man, had to announce who he was. He was Peter Parker, and that, to me, they didn't bring it up in this. And there's a lot of reasons why I'm sure they didn't, but the theme still kind of transfers over. Everyone already knows who all the people are except for Spider-Man, pretty much. Everyone knows who Black Panther was. Everyone knew who Iron Man and Captain America, of course. It wasn't a secret who any of these heroes were. And I wonder if they're going to expand on that in the future with Spider-Man, because his alter ego is still secret except for Tony Stark, as far as I know. Even I don't think he's even at the stage with Mary Jane or whatever. But
they're going by the comics. He doesn't meet Mary Jane until much later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like, as far as we know in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, none of his rogues gallery really exists yet. Otherwise, we would have had some YouTube footage of like Spider-Man throwing down with the Vulture or something. Like I think we've only seen like a handful of powered criminals, for lack of a better term, on like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and it's like the Absorbing Man and a few Inhumans. We don't really have anything like Sandman. We don't have anything like Stilt Man. We don't have anything like the Vulture. Certainly the Green Goblin.
Right.
And so like the only other thing I think of that clearly comes to mind is Purple Man on Jessica Jones, Kilgrave. And so I do actually kind of wonder, because the next Netflix Marvel series is going to be Luke Cage.
Yep.
And so I'm interested to see how this plays out there, because Luke Cage is a powered individual who operates outside the law, and also because he has a criminal record. There's how that's going to play out with him. Because
hero for hire.
Yeah, hero for hire. On the one hand, he is a hero for hire. He's theoretically operating somewhat openly, but he may actually be operating significantly openly. But how that plays out in terms of, will he be being forced to register? Will we have our first sort of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Netflix Marvel series crossover with like Coulson showing up, or General Talbot showing up, saying, "I'm trying to conscript him" or something.
Right. I know we're running short on time here, but Tyler already answered this question, so I'm curious to know which side do you lean towards.
I'm kind of leaning towards Cap on this. I feel that, particularly when we're dealing with like Thunderbolt Ross and that sort of thing, he does a good job of showing the limits and the problems with the Sokovia Accords, where if the Sokovia Accords weren't an issue, Cap and Tony would have had time at the airport to sit down, talk it over, and say, hey, we know there are more Winter Soldiers out in Siberia. Bucky was framed by Zemo, and he's going to Siberia to thaw out a bunch of Winter Soldiers, and then this makes him a real global threat. And Tony would be willing to go, and I think under the circumstances, Tony would go, okay, at the very least, I'll go with you and all of that to Siberia, and to make sure this all plays out and that everything's on the up and up. As opposed to, no, sorry, we only have 12 hours, we're going to throw down at this airport right now. Which is how it plays out in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. And also, I think the idea of the raft, the prison that Thunderbolt Ross is showing, also kind of sets up kind of the other side of the Accords as well, with Cap's Avengers getting locked up in a real shithole of a prison. Really, I mean, it's not like stereotypical Russian gulag prison, but it's not exactly comfortable either.
Yeah. And after all the stuff they've done so far, they get treated like that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I too would have to say I'm on the side of Captain America. I firmly believe that a lot of the rules are written by the people who have the power, and they will try to take that power away from those who have it or control it. And I think this was a great example of that. And you have people like Captain America saying, no, I'm not trying to rule the world or change anything. I'm trying to help, but I'm not going to have you control what I do because you think you know what's best. You weren't there. You didn't have to have all that stuff on your conscience. You didn't do much of anything while we're here risking our lives to save the world that we live in. And I know if I was in that situation, I would be greatly offended that someone is trying to control me because they either fear me, and they're assuming it's. You can look just. I hate to talk about current events in a nerd way, but you can mirror this to the whole transgender thing they're having going on right now, where people are saying that they're going to rape people in the bathroom, and horrible people are going to do horrible things already, yep. And good people are going to do good things. That's just the way it is. It's still illegal to rape somebody. It's still illegal to harass them. So I don't understand why, if I have a different viewpoint, that has to be, I have to be controlled. You have to choose for me, like as if I can't make my choices for myself. So that's only one kind of off example, but I think that a lot of things in comics and movies and media, video games, there's a lot of things that we can learn if we interpret them properly and take it into the real world. And that's why I love this movie. I loved the comic book, and I also loved the Marvel Ultimate Alliance, because even though that was probably the most watered down of the three, the movie was fantastic. The comic is good, but it still made you think. It's not all black and white. There's very gray areas, and Captain America isn't a saint, and it's not all right on his side either. But that would be the side that I would lean towards as well. But I pass that question on to the viewer. Which side are you on, and why? That's something I want to know. You can either, if you're watching live, you can go ahead and comment in the chat box, or if you're watching it on YouTube, you can leave a comment down below letting us know what you thought and why. But yeah, that is our podcast for tonight. Alex, if you can let them know where they can find you, sir.
All right, I have my YouTube channel, youtube.com/ I think I set it now to count0or, or user/count0or. I will have the link will be in the show notes. And as of this week, what I should be having up, this will be coming up, I believe, if I got this correct, week of the 16th, starting the 16th, is I am going to have a little editorial video. It'll be 2 months after I did my video on the whole hashtag WTFU, where's the fair use, and giving some thoughts on where things are now with YouTube and new developments on that, as well as some efforts on by the Channel Awesome people and the Electronic Frontier Foundation lobbying Capitol Hill to have some reform of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, which affects people like me and Tavian and I'm sorry, I based your name. I apologize.
Tyler.
Taylor.
Game Hunter.
Video Game Hunter.
VJ.
If you're watching us and our shows, it affects us a lot as far as how YouTube copyright rules are reformed and how the Digital Millennium Copyright Act is informed. And after that, I'm finishing up my review series of the I'm covering the Yakuza Papers series of films.
Ooh, that's interesting. I might have to check that out. Both two topics that we might be able to talk about in the future as well. I'd like to talk more about the fair use thing once there's more information. So once your video is out, I'd like to have you back on and talk about that as well. And Tyler, where can they find you, sir?
You can find me on YouTube, the Video Game Hunter 32, or Hot Anime 32. Both of those names will take you both to the same channel. You can follow me on Twitter, VJ32. I'm always posting usually MLP stuff, but I also post about games. And you can also stream for the Console Explosion on Twitch every Monday, and it's usually going to be around 9 o'clock. And that's about it for now.
All right, thank you, sir. And as always, I'm the Philosopher. You can find me on Facebook.com/Philosopher and YouTube and Twitter at The Philosopher. But of course, always on the Console Explosion, as well as these two fine gentlemen and many other members of TCX. My friend recently corrected me for saying the Console Explosion. But anywho, ConsoleExplosion.com. And if you guys like this video, press the like button. If you want to see more videos like this and other content from our little group that we have here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so that you can get updates. And as always, thank you for watching.
Be seeing you.
Bye!